Thousands of players and hundreds of games later, we are down to just 2 players to fight for the Hearthstone Championship Tour Summer Crown. My name is Frodan, I'm joined by Brian Kibler, and we are going to bring you guys the last match to conclude the summer season. And one epic weekend it's been. Kibler with Surrender and Orange. I don't think we can really ask for too many better players here, considering how stacked the field was.
Yeah, it's been an incredible weekend. We sent 4 players who are absolute paragons of the game to the World Championship. It is now down to the 2 of these to figure out who will be the summer champion.
That's right. Let's take a look at how they got here. You just even look at the top 8 matches alone. We saw Surrender had to go up against Empanizado, and he was a player that we weren't really too sure about going into it, but even a lot of the best players like Amnesiac, one of the most critical players and a representative of that region, gave props and said, I think he's playing really well. Surrender took him down and then beat Purple to get to the finals.
Yeah, and Orange had no easy road either. To win his qualification for the World Championship, had to take down the world champion, Pavel, and he himself said he would have had it no other way.
And of course, he's taken down 2 of China's best players, just in terms of their greatness of achievements and also their level of play. Omega Zero is touted as the best player from China, although Jason Zhou is giving him a run for his money.
Yeah, and now it is these 2 players from Asia Pacific and Europe. Asia Pacific, a region that has not necessarily done tremendously well throughout the year. Europe, the absolute dominant region throughout HCT so far. Both champions so far are from Europe.
All right, well, with that, let's go ahead and meet our players who are ready to battle for the grand finals. Our first, hailing from South Korea, please welcome to the stage, Surrender.
Surrender has said that it is very important to him to represent Korea on the world stage. He's already done just that. Can he take the crown?
And his opponent, representing Sweden, please give a warm round of applause for Orange.
Orange making the absolute best of his first HCT playoff appearance, already parlayed it to the finals. Can it be the crown?
The championship! Surrender versus Orange!
그 월즈에서 그 조별 배정을
Even though I already qualified for the Worlds, the seedings there are similar to this championship. Because of that, if I am not first, there's a chance I can meet my teammate Hoi in the preliminaries. I actually made a promise to him that I would try to win this tournament to avoid that.
I've always been a very goal-driven person. I recognize that I will not get many more chances like this ever in my life again. I will not let this chance go to waste.
I'm gonna win. I didn't get here just to lose the final match.
Surrender versus Orange! Ready, set, go!
2 players ready to battle out. Winner gets the crown and $60,000 US. And that means a lot for both of these guys because they're playing for the fame, the glory, the money, and apparently the seeding as well, something that we didn't bring up. Surrender brings up a good point. Doesn't want to run to his teammate potentially in groups, but first seeds cannot meet.
Yeah, he has said that it means a great deal to join his teammate Hoi at the World Championship. Hoi has been instrumental in helping him prepare for this tournament, and he doesn't want to have to knock one another out once they get to the championship. One thing in terms of that preparation, look at the bans here. One thing that really stood out to me going into the last match is Surrender's ban in particular. He has banned Rogue every single round of this tournament. In fact, the only other player to have banned Rogue at any point during this tournament was Orange, who banned it against Omega Zero when they met once again after banning the Hunter in their first encounter. So we've seen most players in this tournament ban Priest or Druid. However, Surrender has made it here with a very unorthodox strategy, trying to beat both of those decks.
Also a good reminder that Surrender went first in his group after defeating Omega Zero, and guess who got second out of that group?
That was Orange.
That was Orange. These guys were both in Group C, and now they meet. So potentially the group of death? Absolutely the group of death. You get to see these 2 guys battle out and see who can claim the crown.
And that will be Surrender playing his Rogue, Orange on the Shaman. We saw Shaman struggle quite a bit over the course of the past few rounds. It actually came down to Shaman mirror matches for Orange in fact, his last round and his quarterfinal round. So this is a deck he's looking to get out of the way if he can.
Yeah.
Though this matchup is a place where his Shaman is likely more powerful because Surrender does have that Murloc Paladin, which is more vulnerable to the Shaman than many other decks.
Yeah, it's tough for Surrender because the Shaman throws his entire lineup for a loop because of the Paladin. And then there's a lot of powerful devolves. Shaman can get onto the board really quickly. Murloc Paladin's not really known for making comebacks, especially without Consecration. That's not in Surrender's deck list. So this will be a power deck for Orange. Almost no bad matchups across the board. The worst is against Priest. And we've seen Shaman sneak it beyond some Priests as well. They're not the goalkeepers that you come to expect all the time.
And Orange with a pretty good start here. No turn 1 play for Surrender means the Primal Fin Totem is not contested immediately, and he has Jade Claws and Maelstrom Portal to back this up. Surrender, he is playing a Prince Keleseth deck, not a turn 2 play because there's no Prince in his hand. He can backstab here. He could take down the Primal Fin Totem and use his dagger, which I expect is a good chance we'll see, though he does have SI Agent in his hand. So being able to enable SI and backstab next turn may end up being more important to him.
It's true, although because he just drew Vilespine Slayer, there's also value in holding backstab even longer. If he plays Shaku and plays patiently, he can pick up a 1-mana play to combo with SI Agent as well. So he's weighing all of these options and feels like Primal Fin Totem a little too threatening, given that his opponent coined it out. It's such an aggressive play instead of waiting for a turn 2 Primal Fin Totem.
It does suggest to Surrender there's a possibility Orange has a powerful turn 2 follow-up. In this case, Orange has either just a Jade Claws or a Totem here. Drawing the Thing from Below makes using his hero power more attractive because every time he uses hero power, the Thing from Below's cost is reduced. There's nothing on a Surrender side of the board to encourage him to want to play Jade Claws here necessarily, and the 1/1 Jade would just die to the dagger, though there is also the Murloc that he would be in some way protecting.
I also do tend to like having Primal Fin Totem coin down turn 2 if you do have it and you have a way to follow it up. And that's because if your opponent's going first, they often can get onto the board even quicker than you can. And because Rogue tends to dagger, or if they're playing Prince Keleseth, you want to be able to set up for the best possible way for Primal Fin Totem to help snowball the board. So I don't blame Orange for that play, even though he doesn't have, say, the Flametongue Totem or something to really punish in his opening hand here.
And the Jade Claws here he sets up, which does prevent him from playing Mana Tide next turn. However, Mana Tide in this matchup is much weaker than in others. Mana Tide Totem, just sort of passively generating your resources can, of course, be powerful. But in the earlier stages of the game, there are lots of tools your opponent can have, like the South Sea Deckhand we saw Surrender pick up just now, that can eliminate it without actually expending a resource.
Yeah, it was interesting because Admirable, when we were practicing a lot of the Shaman matchups, and we ran to Baez's Shaman deck list, which has Cult Masters and Master Revolution, a couple of these other weird tech choices, Prince Tal'Daram, of course, being the most unusual. He was kind of making a note like, wow, the Cult Masters actually really helped me in some matchups to push damage, but normally Mana Tide doesn't fight back, for example. Right. So that's another instance where you're talking about Mana Tide can get run over pretty easily, but Orange does have some ways to fight back, and we'll see if he's able to draw something useful, because right now he's stuck and overloaded for 1 mana crystal.
Surrender has a card advantage tool that will fight in the Shaku that Orange has no answer for thanks to the stealth. It will at least pick up 1 card for Surrender before Orange will be able to deal with it with his Jade Claws. Primal Fin Totem is a draw that is kind of unexciting into this Shaku, because the Shaku, of course, can just attack it without taking damage back. Orange may decide to just use his hero power to have the Primal Fin Totem around later, though the simple fact that even if it does die immediately, it will require a dagger hit, as well as leaving behind a 1/1 body are both relevant factors. He does decide he just wants to give himself more totem options over the turns.
Yeah, Primal Fin is summoning an extra 1/1, like you said. So I like this patience from Orange. Also, no reason to attack with the Jade Claws. What matters is board presence. You're not trying to pressure the life total. Shaman's put aside its face-going ways, at least with this kind of board setup.
That is about, you see a grin from Surrender there. Ooh. That is literally uncastable unless he steals an Overload card. An 11-cost Giant reduced for each Overload, each mana crystal you've overloaded during the game. Well, there's no cards in his Rogue deck with Overload, so it's not a bit of a grin from Surrender there, as things not really going his way with that steal.
Yeah, that's about as bad as it gets, barring the Overload, or unless some devolve enables him to play
I don't know what you get if you got devolved.
Like, you can get the Pine-Size Summoner, and then
okay,
you can
yeah,
play
right.
10.
Right.
Congrats, 10 mana hate it.
Yes. But more to the point, Surrender is getting a pretty good foothold on this board, crucially going pretty wide with a number of relatively high health minions. The 3 health minions, his SI and his Shaku, won't die to even double Maelstrom Portal by themselves, that at least require a punch from the Jade Claws.
Now, what's Orange going to take out here? He's got 2 targets worth evaluating, but the Shaku's the biggest threat because you don't want to give Rogue more resources. And I like that he's taking his time to think. A lot of times people tend to autopilot in these kinds of moments, but Orange, he's really been focusing on a lot of the areas of his gameplay and sat down and talked to us a little bit about what he's focusing on these days when he's playing Hearthstone.
I'm very good at spotting holes in the meta and building good strategies, so that most tournaments I've been successful in, I can already say from round 1 that I've nailed this with my lineup, and my lineup is going to take me a long way in this tournament.
Well, his lineup in this tournament has taken him about as far as it can go, as well as his practice partner Purple, who Surrender eliminated in the semifinals. That's something worth noting, that Orange is playing a virtually identical lineup to Purple. There are a few card choices, of course, that are different, and Surrender dispatched him in the semifinals quite handily.
Yeah. Zero Poison Mine picks up the King's Blood, which allows you to draw a card. Pretty powerful to combo with Vilespine Slayer next turn if he needs to eliminate a big target, but the way Orange is playing in terms of his pace hasn't been very fast whatsoever, so it feels like Orange has kind of caught on to the fact that Surrender doesn't have big power plays. Where was the Cobalt Scale Bait? You know, where was like a big Van Cleave if his opponent had it? Doesn't seem like it's coming out.
And Orange has been steadily using his hero power, reducing the cost of that thing from below. This turn, I wouldn't be surprised to see him use it again. He has Bloodsilk Corsair alongside Maelstrom Portal. That with the Jade Claws can guarantee a clear on this board, but if he does find Spell Power Totem, he can get that clear much more easily.
Oh, Bloodsail Corsair. I don't believe a pirate has been played yet, so patches should come out. And
he also has Flame Tongue.
Yeah.
So Flame Tongue plus the patches may be even better than using the Maelstrom Portal at this point.
Do you want to hero power and get greedier, or would you rather play Thing from Below now while your opponent's proving that he can't get tempo? But you are past the point where Vilespine's a huge swing.
I like the Primal Fin here. I like setting up and giving yourself an opportunity to land this, generate some more minions. Vilespine is a very easy play for your opponent with Zeral Toxins this next turn. So I think that making your opponent react to multiple things in a turn rather than essentially just the Thing from Below. Yes, you would have the Flame Tongue totem as well, but that could be a problem. The second Slayer is really big draw for Surrender here, and he will get yet another draw from King's Blood. Prince Keleseth, not a superstar at this stage in the game.
Well, it's interesting now. Surrender doesn't have to really play Vilespine because that was really his only play in the past. It's a little bit weak to have just Prince Keleseth played, but at the same time, you have 2 ways to continue to activate Vilespine in a Backstab and a King's Blood. And you know that there's bigger targets. It's worth thinking about it.
Yeah, I think I like the Vilespine from Surrender here because it does end up removing the minions, multiple minions from the board, as well as give you a body that can attack this Primal Fin Totem. He does have the second Vilespine, so the ability to clear off the Thing from Below is very real. Thrall, though, for Orange, is kind of interesting because he can potentially just play Thing into Thrall. That will give him several large minions that end up working potentially very well against Surrender trying to pick things apart with Vilespine Slayer.
Yeah, and I think, you know, when you see Surrender backstab a Bloodsail Corsair, what does that say to Orange, who's been playing really slow?
I think that's respect to both Flame Tongue as well as to the Evolve effects. He wants to get rid of that body before it can potentially trade into his Vilespine Slayer, wants to protect that on the board.
Orange Totems gets Healing Totem, which is probably one of the more useless ones in this situation. Taunt, or I guess spell damage wouldn't do too much either, so he's pretty much just looking for Taunt Totem. And because his opponent played the first Thing from Below and a Shadow Step, probably feels like it's unlikely his opponent has a very powerful way to remove both his Manatide Totem and his Thing from Below, but Surrender does. He's got a pretty darn good way, actually.
He absolutely does. There can be Keleseth, or he doesn't have a weapon up, so I would expect to see the Keleseth used to combo this Vilespine. The Vilespine will kill the Thing from Below, and he can use the Vilespine Slayer on the board to take out the Manatide Totem, and he does exactly that. This will remove a lot of the threat from Orange's side of the board, as well as his ability to generate resources. Evolve, though, picked up for Orange. He can play the thing from below and triple evolve that entire board.
Yeah, he also has the option of keeping thing from below for after he's done with
True.
everything to try to protect any minions from getting value traded. Because, I mean, he is evolving to what, anywhere from 2 to 4, so it could be a little bit awkward.
May not go with evolve at all. May just play the thing from below. Is he going to Thrall?
Looks like he is evolving in some capacity, and Thrall Destier is the choice, and that's a lot of minion. Let's see what comes out of all of these evolutions.
Oh, 8-8 taunt. That is very, very large. He did turn his 5-5 into an 8-8.
Yeah, it's a 5-5 taunt to an 8-8 taunt.
I would say that's a natural step of evolution. Swashbuckler, that could find perhaps a Hex, something to get through the big minion.
What about Lightning Storm or Volcano?
This helps turn on the Giant.
Oh, you're right.
It's an overload spell that gets an overload spell.
You're right. And there's a lot of good overload AoEs
There
as
are.
well.
If he finds Lightning Storm here.
Is that a Lightning Storm? I see a Lightning Storm. What an unlikely turn of events.
You see it, Orange let out a laugh. His gigantic board just took a huge hit.
He kept 1 minion in that exchange, and that's because Lightning Storm didn't clear it. We emphasize that Rogue has no way to deal with a large and wide board because they don't play AoE. Well,
they play
what? It turns out they do.
And now that Snow Fury Giant is 8 mana, it is playable in a couple of turns. He has just an 8-8 in addition to everything else.
I like this heads-up play from Surrender, realizing that he can use his health as a resource. Orange isn't out of it yet. I mean, he held back Evolve for a reason. And now he might be able to get something big off his Barnes if, I don't know, a 1/1 Aya comes out, he can evolve that to a 7-mana minion.
He has a Maelstrom Portal as well, so he can clear off the... Ooh, a Doppelgangster.
Oh, that's kind of
can
the
get
dream.
big.
That's why you put Barnes in this deck.
This is an interesting decision from Orange, though, because now he cannot cast both Maelstrom Portal, Evolve, and use his hero power.
I like the portal because it takes off the Biospine Slayer.
So he has to decide, does he want to save that Evolve or evolve his entire board here? He's going to go ahead and invest, get the Evolve off. The Doppelgangster off that Barnes is huge. Just kidding, it's the same side.
Oh no! Big Time Racketeer is the worst possible option. What a turn of events. Just wait, hold on, let me see. So the Doppelgangster got evolved and lost stats.
No, it stayed the same stats because it was 1/1.
Oh, you're right, but effectively, it just did nothing happen.
But it is worth noting that despite the very bad result from that, Surrender is in a position where he kind of has to deal with a lot of this stuff in the board here, because any high cost minion, even if it's weak, is something that threatens to turn into something even larger thanks to the Thrall hero power. And Surrender doesn't have very much life. He's
That is
at
true.
12. He used his face to attack into the Iron Bark Protector last turn to try and protect 1 health on his minion. And now he is in a position where there's a lot of pressure on him, even if it's just a small minion here and there.
Yeah. Bloodlust is really scary, even with just 2 minions at this point.
And that's a 3/4 Flame Element on the hand, thanks to the Grimy Gadgeteer.
There you go.
Devolve.
Well, let's see what's behind the evolution door. Okay, +3
A
health.
lot of health is a big part of this, because that makes it very difficult for Surrender to trade into, which is the most important thing for Orange right now. He just wants to protect his board.
Can't believe this is still a game, but I mean, Surrender's just kind of been barely hanging in there. He hasn't been able to pressure Orange whatsoever.
Another captain that does not allow a trade up into the Archmage here. He can kill the 3/4 Flame Elemental that still leaves 5 in the board, but not quite lethal.
Yeah, and the Jade minion just summons another 1/1.
Right.
Or is it a 2/2 because he played Jade Claws? Actually, he's increasing the board power, so he can't fully remove the board.
But he is not in lethal range yet. He is still left with 1 health on this board. And he's developing a very large set of minions himself.
Yeah, Orange is looking for any way to generate 1 damage whether through the draw or perhaps through an evolution.
Oh, Surrender has 19 on the board here after the trigger from the Scalebane. Goes on to his sturdier Pirate.
And that's going to do it. Flame Tongue Totem off the top. Orange is going to get first blood here in this best-of-5 finals.
And that was a pretty crazy game back and forth. It looked like Surrender was pretty much overwhelmed by the Thrall. He managed to find a Lightning Storm off of a Finder's Keepers, off a Swashbuckler, and then it looked bad for Orange when the evolve of his Doppelgangster became a big-time Racketeer, but he was still able to get the damage done.
Yeah, and as much as Surrender got kind of a miracle pull out there, he wasn't able to fully clear enough of the board and start counter pushing. It was too late. It seemed like he was going to win the board, but Orange takes the first game. We're going to find out what happens in this best-of-5 when we return to the Championship Tour.
Still to come from Los Angeles, the Hearthstone Summer Championship rolls on.
Welcome back, everybody, from the Blizzard Arena in Los Angeles, California. You are watching the grand finale of the summer season here on the Hearthstone Championship Tour. As currently, we have one player up, 1-0 over Surrender. Orange is going to look to secure his legacy. Something that we kind of brought up, too, is that Orange is one of the top earners of all time in Hearthstone. Currently sitting number 9, and if he wins the $60,000, he moves up to number 5, ahead of some names you may have heard of, Kalento, Tice.
Yeah, despite the fact that Orange has not had a previous appearance at an HCT championship, he has had a ton of success in competitive events, DreamHack, similar sorts of majors. He's one of the most well-respected players in the entire Hearthstone scene.
And we're going to turn to game 2 here with Rogue versus Druid. Surrender has a pretty decent curve here with the Firefly and the SI7 agent. Orange has at least one of the cards that he's looking for, which is Jade Blossom. Rogue does tend to get a little bit farther ahead of the Jade Druid, but Jade Druid still has a lot of powerful cards, and one of them that could be huge is the Spreading Plague. Spreading Plague is a good way to shut down Rogue aggression, and as long as they don't have a lot of widespread power units with Cobalt Scalebane, for example, and they're not pushing with the Bone Mares, Jade Druid can stall for long enough to usually turn the tides.
Yeah, we saw how wide the Tempo Rogue deck can often go in many of the matches we've seen this weekend. We've seen Fireflies and Swashbucklers and all this stuff all spread out over the board. That's not nearly as powerful a strategy against Jade. Spreading Play can shut that down. So Surrender is looking to have individual large threats, which are more difficult for the Druid to deal with.
Okay, I like this from Surrender. He threw away, he only kept Firefly, threw away everything else. And he recognizes that it's not really a matchup where he's going to be utilizing things like SI7 Agent, and even Swashbuckler to a certain extent. He'd rather have Prince Kelseth. In fact, a lot of times you don't even want to play Swashbuckler too early unless you absolutely have to, because how powerful it is to have Prince Kelseth to summon patches.
Yeah, and there's also the threat of the Singleton Galacta Crawler in Orange's deck. He has 2 Doomsayers and a Galacta Crawler for early game defense, which can make Swashbuckler in particular very dangerous to play early.
Not too much to actually think about here this turn from Orange, but more important to try to conceal the hand. But if Orange had a Wild Growth, he would play a Wild Growth 100%, so there's not really too much to do.
I think there's a little thought about whether you punch the Firefly or punch the face with your hero power here, because if he hits the Firefly, he can potentially set up to force the dagger trade into a Jade Blossom in a future turn, or potentially just punch the Firefly down himself with the future hero power, and that's what Orange chooses to do.
Yeah, it's really good insight there. There are some times we've seen Rogue go aggressive with Cold Blood, for example, and really try to pressure if their hand says all in early.
The Druid of the Claw is a pretty good steal for Surrender there. It represents potentially just a sizable minion if he goes in bear form, or charge damage late in the game. The 4/4 charge mode of that is also very powerful.
Yeah, the charge especially, how it goes with, like we mentioned, Cold Blood. It's actually a funny thing. You can Druid the Claw, Shadow Step. And then and you don't have Leroy? Well, you can get budget Leroy, I guess.
Exactly. You only get 4 out of it, but that's still good. Ooh, Shaku picked up for Surrender here. A pretty immediate play for him, and now we see Surrender. He could have chosen to take a value trade here with his Flame Elemental, but now this both makes his board a little bit better against Swipe, because Swipe can't go face and clear everything off except for the Shaku, and also helps consolidate things against the potential Spreading Plague.
Yeah, speaking of Spreading Plague here, Orange has a couple of ways he can play this turn. Obviously, Jade Spear is the best tempo he can get, but Jade Blossom just came to the hand. And based off the way Orange has his Spreading Plagues lined up, he'd actually rather not kill a 1-1.
It is a little awkward.
If you don't kill a 1-1, you basically have written Spreading Plague on your forehead and just ask Surrender to look at it, because at this point, Surrender just makes the easy read that you didn't kill a 1-1 for free.
Yeah, your Spreading Plague is absolutely face up in that instance. And you could argue that your opponent is less likely to trade off their board if you do just punch into one of these after casting a Jade Blossom. Orange, though, it looks like he's just going with the Jade Spirit here. And yeah, he wants to get as much presence on the board immediately. The Blossom last turn wouldn't really ramp him too much. He would ramp into 7 mana next turn if he's going to play Spreading Plague anyway. It doesn't really influence his decision. And he does have Plague into Plague potentially. So if Surrender keeps pushing with small minions, he can do Plague into potentially that Primordial Drake.
That's true. Although it does feel like the second Spreading Plague is often a lot weaker after playing the first one, because if you can't stop that first wave of board, it usually starts getting kind of crazy.
You can also potentially play Plague into Jade Blossom Spellbreaker.
It's interesting. That's a pretty cheap spell, which Rogue can use very well if they combo with Van Cleef or SI7 agent.
And you see the consolidation of the board from Surrender. Wants to get all of his small minions off the board going into the 6 mana turn from Orange. Absolutely paying utmost respect to Spreading Plague.
I like this. He's trying to go for a big Van Cleef right now.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, he's going to get punished, but I like where Surrender's head's at right now. He says, this is an opportunity for me to really pressure your turn 6 play, which is Aya Blackpaw, most of the time.
And there's only a single copy of Spellbreaker in Orange's deck, so the likelihood that he's able to answer this effectively is very low. Surrender will get the bad news. That card is in fact in his hand. He sees the hover. Yeah, there it is. The thing is, that's not as bad for Surrender as it could be in some other situations. Because he did pick up the Druid of the Claw, he can just play a 4/6 here. You know, he has the ability to pressure and protect his Shaku, which is continuing to generate resources.
Hey, now he has 2 SI7 agents. Keeper the Grove, not really going to do much here. Kind of like you said. Originally, I was thinking, man, Drew the Claw in taunt mode, when does that ever really come down here in a matchup like this? But
right now,
in this instance, it actually worked out okay.
Orange could potentially trade off his Spellbreaker, get some damage on the Druid, fire off one of those Spreading Plagues. That could set up for Primordial Drake to clear off more things in the following turn. He also has access to Jade Blossom, potentially Wrath something down. With the Earthen Scales actually on the Shaku is pretty key here.
Yeah.
Because it's not vulnerable to Wrath. You'd have to use Swipe to take care of it.
He also has Jade Blossom Mirekeeper, ramp up to a guaranteed 10 mana, and then Primordial Drake Wrath can clear off most of the minions because Rogue's not known to buff stuff.
It's true.
So you can kill off the 4/2 and the 2/2, and then Wrath down Shaku. But that's not saying that anything. That's not saying that the board will be exactly like that, because Surrender might play, you know, big minions like a Cobalt Scalebait. But it is the turn before Bone Mare, so if you want to go for like a softer AoE clear like that, it might be the turn to do it. Looks like he doesn't want to take too much damage right now. I mean, Rogue is super high pressure deck compared to your normal average Hearthstone deck at this point.
All right, we're just gonna kind of split the difference, kill off the. Oh, actually going for board presence here with the Mirekeeper.
Interesting.
And he does not have Ultimate Infestation in hand, so ramping at this point doesn't get him particularly far. This could potentially allow the Primordial Drake, which he does have the mana for next turn, to be much more powerful, at least on board. He has the ability to get some damage on the Shaku here, and then follow up with Primordial Drake for a clear.
Oh, man.
Evolving Spores.
Yeah.
That is a very interesting card in an aggressive deck that can have substantial board presence here, because getting Divine Shield, getting health, getting attack, there are so many ways that Evolving Spores can do a lot of damage to Orange.
Yeah, it turns out Gentle Megasaur's effect is really powerful when you combine it with a 5/4 buy for 4, it becomes nuts. But if you can choose any situation to use it, it wouldn't be half bad if you're able to dominate the board like what Surrender's doing right now.
And here, by trading rather than trying to kill the 2/2, he now has 3 minions that Orange will need to only be able to trade in one of if he does decide to Primordial Drake here. He can only take down the Shaku. The other will be left with 1 health, but that is enough to keep them around to potentially get more damage.
Oh yeah, and I mean, Surrender is also keeping his options open for Bone Mares, in case he wants to maybe utilize his Vial Spine, in case he wants to maybe even go for double tempo cards with Keeper of the Grove as a 7 agent. So I really like that Surrender's keeping in mind, even if it's just a 1-of with the Primordial Drake. He's played around it.
Yeah, it will be Drake that comes down, wants to deny any more cards from that Shaku. Keeper of the Grove is kind of interesting, just as a silencer to push some damage even. Might not see that right now, but it is potential Bone Mare turn, but the math is a little bit awkward because each of these minions just runs into the Drake and does not quite kill it. He would be able to Bone Mare and be left with effectively a 7-1, and if he did attack both his minions in, as well as the 5/5 body.
Yeah, another problem with going too wide and aggressive is Spreading Plague, which, I mean, I think Surrender can start having an idea because Orange has had some very weak plays. He's not hitting his Aya. He didn't play Jade Behemoth. He hasn't played like big ramp because he had an opportunity to ramp Mire Keeper into a 10-mana play, which obviously you know that Ultimate Infestation is what you're aiming for. So I think Surrender can start thinking, well, he's probably holding some situational cards. Plus the way he's trying to soften up my board. Could be a Spreading Plague.
And Surrender taking his time here. He's just going to go for Evolving Spores. He does have Evolving Spores and SI8. 7 agent potentially, yeah. He's just going to go with the guaranteed board presence here. And this does give him a 7/1 minion, potentially a swipe from Orange, plus punching into the Bone Mare could clear this board. That's a lot of mana though. And right now, Orange doesn't have a way to kill either of these minions. He can Spreading Plague, and that would at least throw bodies in the way. But Surrender, he has Vial Spine Slayer. He has Keeper of the Grove. He has ways to punch through those small taunt minions.
It's a little too expensive for the optimal use of cards. And, you know, if my opponent had a Bone Mare on 7, they thought so long about playing 9/9 for 7.
Right.
It kind of makes me think, what do they have?
There's got to be something going on over there.
Right.
I mean, Orange can Jade Blossom, Jade Behemoth, which will build him a pretty big board. Only 1 taunt, though, which could potentially allow just a single Vial Spine Slayer to push a lot of damage.
He's got 2 Spreading Plagues. Might as well use 1 while he can. But this is looking better for Surrender by the turn.
Another Bone Mare. You see a little bit of grin from Surrender there. That is an incredibly powerful card, but doesn't really necessarily jive with what he wants to do this turn.
Yeah,
if he's looking to push damage, he does have the ability to just Keeper, potentially Evolving Spores, or
and lethal.
Yeah, there is the possibility if he got Wind Fury that he would just have lethal damage off the Evolving Spores.
That's something that no one should ever play around in the 1,000 years. But if it happens, I mean, then Surrender's got you. You can't really be too mad if that's the case here.
I think he's going for it.
Oh, he's going for it. 30%? Wait a second.
I saw a lot of attacks. That's Wind Fury, and that's the game. Surrender closes out game 2 against Orange, takes game 3.
Orange can do nothing but laugh. What can you do? He's got you.
And the thing is, even if it wasn't Wind Fury, if he just got plus health, that's actually quite powerful on his 7/1, given what his opponent has in the board. If he gets plus attack, he's pushing 10 damage there, and still has Burn in his hand, Vial Spine in his hand. There were a lot of results from that Evolving Spores that weren't Wind Fury, that were still very powerful, didn't just end the game right there.
That's right, with a lot of upside too. And I mean, he's down 0-1, and he's up against a deck that has scaling late game power, which is getting increasingly more threatening. He preyed on it while it's weak. What is Jade Drew's biggest weakness? It's the early stages of the game before they can get their Jade trains going, and if their card draw is weak. Surrender sensed both from Orange and pressed in while he could.
And we talked quite a bit about Surrender's ban strategy going into this. he was the only player to consistently ban Rogue. His plan is to beat the Jade Druids. His plan is to beat the Priests. Very different than what most people have been doing, and it's working out very well for him so far.
Yeah, that's right. The Rogue ban is very unusual, considering that a lot of players feel like Rogue is much more beatable than Jade Druid and Highlander Priest, which have taken up the vast majority of the bans in the rest of the tournament. In fact, they've been in almost the entire ban, except for the Odd Hunter and you know, a couple of Warlocks and Shamans here and there.
Rogue is actually the class going through the, I believe, the semifinals that had the highest win rate in large sample size. Paladin was the overall highest win rate, but had far fewer representatives to really contribute to that. So given the fact that Druid actually has had a negative win rate overall, despite being the most banned class, granted, when it's the most banned class, it often means the people who are trying to beat it are the ones who are playing against it, not banning it. So that it does cause some trouble in evaluating those sort of statistics. But this is one of the decks that Surrender is playing to beat Druid. This Murloc Paladin deck, despite the fact that Murloc War Leader was nerfed with the balance patch change not long ago, still puts on a lot of pressure against these Druid decks because they too lost a step in the nerfs.
Well, doesn't have a 2-mana play, but this is quite a powerful setup for a Gentle Megasaur if Jade Druid can't answer. And Orange does have plays. He's got Jade Idol. Not exactly the strongest thing that Jade Druid can be doing, but something.
And Surrender can eat this Jade Golem here, make himself a Murloc. That gives him a Coldlight Seer to buff the Murlocs on his board into the Megasaur to make them more likely to live. Orange, I think, is going to have to remove something this turn. I don't think he'll use Wrath, because Wrath is powerful to deal with a War Leader after the fact, which he'd otherwise be left with no way to remove. I think he'll punch down the Recruit there, and that's exactly what happens.
It's more of a bite, but I see what you mean. As Orange takes it down. You still play the Coldlight Seed here, don't you?
Absolutely.
Oh, well, hold on, sorry.
Rockpool Hunter may change things, though at the same time, Coldlight Seer here is more mana efficient. If Surrender wanted to maximize his Murloc plan, he could Coldlight Seer this turn and then Hero Power plus Rockpool Hunter the following turn, which would give him more overall Murlocs to buff with his Megasaur. But here, yeah, he's going to go ahead and just play the Hunter. It looks like he's just trying to maximally support the Megasaur next turn.
Well, Orange has the coin, and he has coin 4-mana plays, whether he wants to ramp up his crystals with Mire Keeper, puts a 3/3 on the board and challenges both 2/3s. Jade Spirit gets his ramp up to a 2/2.
This is where this matchup is terrifying, though, because the threat of Megasaur on every single turn means that things could go just absolutely terribly for you.
Yeah.
The Megasaur right now, if he gets +1/+1, probably the best possible option to allow none of those to be immediately eaten by the Mire Keeper. You could also just Rallying Blade this down and take things a little bit slower if you wanted to.
Yeah, the nice thing about Gentle Megasaur is now that you have Vilefin Inquisitor, you can play a lot longer of a game with just hero powers. They become real threats, and Druid doesn't want to be hero powering. They want to be playing big J's with the remaining crystals. And Orange also just played Mire Keeper, which emphasized that he has a little bit of a heavier hand.
These are some of the weaker options Surrender could have found. Can't be targeted and stealth are both quite poor here. Yeah, he's going to go with Wind Fury. He got that last time off his adapt. He's going to go for it again. Pushes damage, but does mean there's a value trade available for the Mire Keeper on one of these Murlocs.
Yeah, it's scary for sure. Even to the point where Orange might Wrath one of these down. He can also Nourish for Crystals first before doing that.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what we'll see. Nourish for Crystals enables the Wrath in the same turn. He can clear both Murlocs, leaving just the Megasaur. But the Megasaur, with the follow-up of Cobalt Scalebane, is still really threatening. Or possibly Finja.
Ooh. The thing is that your opponent just ramped up to 8 mana, right?
He did.
So, what's better against a Primordial Drake? I guess the Cobalt Scalebane, because then you can immediately kill off.
I think that's probably true, because if there were a Primordial Drake that came down, your opponent could either trade into your 8-attack Megasaur or your Scalebane with their Mirekeeper.
You can also just protect it with the Rallying Blade and kind of do the same thing next turn and then not lose your Gentle Megasaur to the area effect of the Primordial Drake. And it feels like you can squeeze value better that way. Turn 6, you set up Finja, and turn 7, you have Bone Mare. So it feels like there are a couple options here that Surrender can explore, and it kind of depends on what he's reading from Orange's hand, because his opponent went for a big ramp.
He's going for Finja right now. He does have the ability to kind of sit back and relax with Finja. Yeah, there's no real pressing issue to use, push the Finja now. He can play the Scalebane next turn, buffing Finja as well, that can allow it to attack into larger minions in later turns.
Orange also has a couple options here too. He's got powerful 6-mana plays. He's got Primordial Drake to just kind of stop Finja from getting a kill because he's got 8 health. It's really hard without Sunkeeper Terram to guarantee it. And even then, what is the best play against Sunkeeper Terram versus Spike Ridge Steed versus maybe Blessing of Kings and a few other things?
Yeah, Orange definitely evaluating lots of options here. The Drake is certainly the sturdiest play to prevent your opponent from getting the best chance of a wide board from Finja. One problem is it's also your best way to mop up the possible result of a Finja attack. There is, of course, the threat that any board can be buffed by Coldlight Seer after the fact, so you don't necessarily get a great opportunity to clear that regardless of what your opponent gets.
And I believe the Jades aren't anything special right now. Aya Blackpaw almost ensures that your opponent gets a Finja trade. So with this hit, Orange is going to risk it. I mean, with War Leader being pulled, it's no longer nearly as oppressive as it used to be with the health buff. Oh man, some powerful cards coming into Surrender's hand right now.
Well, and he does have the Coldlight Seer. He has Rallying Blade plus Coldlight Seer this turn. He can use the Rallying Blade to take down Aya if he wishes, leaving just a 3/3. Then Coldlight Seer can buff both the Finja and the Murlocs that come off of it. And if there's a War Leader there, that's really powerful.
Let's see. Kind of weak options there. I guess the best part is that he gets to buff their health. But he already has used one Gentle Megasaur. Still, though, this is a lot of pressure, and because it's so wide, almost guarantees that he has a Bone Mirror target.
And look at the distribution of health on his board. The fact that he got a Inquisitor is actually pretty good, because it's one of the higher health minions, and mostly what he wants is a minion to survive next turn for Bone Mirror.
Yeah,
even with the Primordial Drake, there's no clear available here. He can kill the Finja. He would still leave 3 other minions. And one of them will definitely be able to be Bone Mirrored attacked into the Drake. It is getting to the point where Orange is potentially able to cast that Ultimate Infestation he drew. He's at 9 mana, so that's available next turn, but his life is getting very low. He's only at 11.
Yeah, the win parry damage actually is pretty relevant, being able to get 6 extra, or 4 extra there. Orange plays Primordial Drake, tries to hope for Ultimate Infestation. Surrender's got 7s of his choice.
And the Bone Mare on the Inquisitor here leaves you with still some health on your minion. You're going to be able to clear off with the Rallying Blade, push 4 damage, and have a lot left on board. So Orange down to 7 here, and facing 14 on board. Even Ultimate Infestation leaves him in a position where the Bone Mare kills him.
Can he survive through maybe Jade Behemoth Spellbreaker instead, or does he have to hope that Surrender doesn't have more damage?
Behemoth plus Spellbreaker does give him a 6 health taunt and remove 4 from the board. A Bone Mare there would still punch through, because there'd still be 8 left on the board after the Bone Mare is able to punch through one of the minions. Yeah, Ultimate Infestation clears the Bone Mare, sets Orange to 12 life, but Bone Mare remaining in Surrender's hand will be enough to seal this game next turn.
Yeah, this is checkmate. Surrender kept putting just enough pressure, got just enough damage. The double Bone Mare is too much. Jade Druid has now been stomped twice here by Surrender. Taking it out with Rogue, and now his Paladin. Paladin's win rate continues to ascend, and Surrender is 1 game away from claiming the Summer Championship.
And it really is worth noting, Surrender's strategy this tournament so different than so many other players. His lineup looks very similar, but he is looking to punish that Jade Druid. He's banning the Tempo Rogue, trying to protect his aggressive decks, and it's worked very well for him so far. Can it get over the final hurdle of potentially the last game of the championship?
You mentioned it. Surrender's been banning Rogue non-stop, and it's been working out great. He's really the only player to employ this strategy consistently. It seems like Orange has been flex banning based off what his opponents bring.
There have now been 6 total Rogue bans in this entire tournament. 5 of them are Surrender, every single round. The other was Orange's second encounter with Omega Zero after he changed up his strategy and did not ban the Hunter.
That's right. So Surrender currently is up 2-1. Only needs to win one more game to claim the Summer Championship crown, to claim $60,000 and that first seed that he so desires to avoid Hoi in the World Championship. Orange is not out of it yet, and every single series has been going to Game 5 for him, where he's able to clutch it out. What's going to be happening in the final games here in the Championship Tour? We'll find out right after this.
BlizzCon 2017. Watch the opening ceremony and esport events free starting November 3rd.
Surrender is one game away from closing out the summer season with quite the bang here, with his unusual strategy of bringing a lineup that targets Druid and a few other classes. He leaves open Druid and Priest, and he's banning Rogue. It's something that a lot of people theory crafted, but only he was the one out of 16 players to bring that specific lineup, and it's working wonders, Kibler.
It is. He is the only player banning Rogue consistently, and he is one game away from the championship here. He has his last deck as Kazakus Priest, the Highlander Priest deck, the most popular deck in the entire field, but one that has not performed up to expectation all weekend. It is one that certainly in this matchup can sometimes struggle.
All right, so let's go into the Priest versus Druid. This should be a good matchup versus Druid on paper, but we've seen Priest with a lot of big upsets. In fact, Priest's win percentage all weekend long has been climbing higher and higher. It started off a little bit rocky, getting hit a few times by those control decks or anything else, but now it's sitting at a very comfortable 55%, putting it as the second or third best deck, depending if you count relevant sample sizes into the mix here, but with Rogue.
And one thing that we have seen in this matchup, which a lot of players believe to be firmly in the Druid's favor, are Priest winning. And a big part of that has been the approach they have had to the matchup, trying to ensure that they get in early damage with minions, trying to ensure that they're able to pressure their opponent. One big play we've seen from Surrender is the tempo profit Valen, as we've been saying, just getting your Valen down when your opponent does not have a board that can contest it, and allowing you to use your hero power to protect itself and keep pushing damage.
There's a Wild Growth Orange was looking for the previous game, as mana was a slight limitation as Jade Druid losses so far. Surrender has several plays lined up for the early and mid stages of the game, but what's going to be really important is what can Orange do to start winning back the board, because Priest usually grabs a little bit of control if they have any summons of minions.
And that Cabal Talon Priest, that may seem like a strange inclusion in this deck, which is so focused so frequently on card draw, that is a little twist that Surrender is playing that makes his deck better in this matchup. He's able to buff now to an 8 health on this Radiant Elemental that is incredibly hard for Druid to remove.
Yeah, it's really inefficient to remove, in fact.
And not only is this a 2-8 minion, but this will make Surrender's future spells so much more efficient as well. He can just keep attacking, keep pressuring, and support them with, for instance, a Kazakus Potion for 1 next turn. He can immediately cast it without even having to use his coin.
Yeah, and Kazakus Potion for 1 is relevant considering that Surrender has also the Prophet Valen. However, I'm looking at Orange's hand, and if you have 5 mana crystals, relatively safe, I feel like this is kind of the ideal hand for Orange. Malfurion the Passion is actually extremely relevant in this matchup too, primarily because it not only sets up some defense, but you also can start removing very efficiently with your 2 mana, and also even armor up in case your opponent starts pushing a lot of pressure on you.
Malfurion is one of the more important cards in this particular matchup for Orange, because it does answer that aggressive line of play the Priest is capable of bringing to bear. Being able to use your hero power to effectively tank up does prevent the aggression from mounting on you. And just look at the mana crystals. Orange is up to 7. He'll have 8 on his next turn. Surrender only has 4 to work with. So he's going to have to try to keep this aggression up despite being very far behind in overall resources. It's a 5 that Surrender has chosen.
5 is usually the indication that you don't feel like your mid game is strong enough and you need to have some flexible options. 1, of course, ironically, is a late game option, and then 10 is also the nuke option.
Yeah. The Gold Thorn in this matchup is pretty attractive, being able to buff your minions' health. I think the Surrender was potentially either looking for Resummon, 5/5, and maybe health. Perhaps card draw. He's going to with, +4 health and card draw here. So if Orange does not remove this board, it's going to become much more difficult for him to remove in the future. And look at that stat. 2 and 5 with Druid on the weekend. Orange has not been having the most success with this deck. And this Primordial Drake, though, is going to at least remove one of the minions on Surrender's side of the board before they get the health buff.
That's right. If you factor out, Hunter's abysmal performance, and there's only one player, Omega Zero, that are struggling with it, the two worst performing decks are very close in win percentage at just a tick above 40%. That's Shaman and Druid so far. It's been an abysmal performance for Druid this weekend. But again, it's because it feels like a lot of people have strong game plans against it, and they know how to beat it.
I wonder how much of that is just Surrender beating up Druids. Like, how many times did
a
Surrender
good percentage
beat
of
Druid?
It. Yeah.
I'm actually really curious. We don't have that stat right in front of us, but we may be able to find it.
Surrender is kind of a full hand here, and if you can keep the Radiant Elemental alive, the Lyra can work some pretty big wonders. I don't even think he's incentivized to really do much with his one remaining mana crystal. We preach about mana efficiency, but coin, all these cheap spells do have relevance.
Vision finds Pain, Dragonfire, and Silence.
Okay.
Silence? He could push some damage right now if he wants, but does run the risk of using his resources inefficiently, especially the Lyra potential next turn.
Yeah, I guess because Shadow Visions technically draws 2 cards, one off the
Lyra. Yeah, he's going for it. Just getting him. And this is the sort of play that we're talking about. The aggression against the Druid. You need to get that chip damage in. You need to soften them up before you get to the end game, because they can just spew so many gigantic monsters on the board once they have enough mana and enough Jades built up that you can't possibly race it unless you've done enough damage to burst them down.
Very good point, very good point. And Surrender also keeping his hand size in count as well. He had 9 cards, and Shadow Visions is a +2, very similar to Auctioneer, because you end up drawing a card off the draw as well, or off the play. So he's trying to free up his hand space, because it doesn't look like Orange can deal with his Radiant Elemental, which has been there since turn 2.
I don't even know what that thing's natural health is now. I think it's 12. Is its max health?
You got me.
It's got Power Word Shields,
not ready for that question,
the Talon Priest buff, and the Gold Thorn. Yeah. I think that's plus, what, 9? Yeah, it's 13. It's 12 health.
Surrender picks up Akanai Soul Priest. Don't know if it changes much because he doesn't have Circle of Healing. And he was thinking about Lyra. Another thing, too, is that he's kind of cut a big portion of his turn away just now by thinking. So this is one of the things you kind of have to decide a little bit early, because you never know if you have to adapt to some quick stuff.
Ooh, another Mind Blast. He has Prophet Valen and 2 Mind Blasts in hand.
I mean, I don't know how he fits both those in if his Radiant Elemental drops, but there's some world where that becomes 20 damage in 1 turn.
They cast the first one. So I like this, casting the one naturally in your deck to make your opponent think, okay, well, he's out of Mind Blast. They don't necessarily have to play around it. And the burst potential from the second one from Surrender may take Orange off guard.
Orange has Ultimate Infestation, and that is the big swing card. Public enemy #1 for most people. Deal 5 damage, draw 5 cards, gain 5 armor, summon a 5/5, start 5 Reddit threads.
Yes, and?
New choice! Yes, and you also summon a bunch of Jades.
Oh, well, there we go. Our little stat I was asking about. 4 and 1 so far against Druids. That Surrender has contributed to that record. So if it were not for Surrender, I think Druid would be about 50-50.
I wonder.
This is definitely an important turn for Surrender here, trying to figure out how he can both continue his pressure as well as put himself in a position where the reload that Orange is going to be capable of after this Ultimate Infestation does not force him in a position where he cannot recover. He does not yet have Anduin, so he both is incapable of responding to a board that goes really big, and also still is going to struggle a bit to actually close out this game now that his offense has been stymied.
Yeah, and that is another thing we didn't really talk too much about, but just the value of the 5-mana potion drawing 2 cards. It is a big flexible point of Kazakus, which makes it so powerful in this matchup. And Surrender still has a decent amount of card draw too. And I also wonder, like, how good is Mind Control if the Jades get really big? Surrender stall for a turn, perhaps. There are some interesting usage of these spells that we don't normally see that Lyre can give you.
Orange is going to take the Priest of the Feast off the board. Get his Jade Idol on. And that is 4-4, so we are getting into the range. They start getting very large. Circle of Healing potentially allows Surrender to clear some things off with Akanai, but also does represent burst damage late in the game with the Prophet Valen if he does find Anduin. So definitely has to be considering all of the applications of each of his cards.
Sort of want to draw in some capacity here. If you do end up trying to clear the board just a little bit, which I think you can afford to take a little damage first from the Druid, it does start to get scary soon, but I think this is the turn to take damage if you want to.
Oh, Gnomish Inventor. Okay, speaking of drawing, here's 3 different card draw effects that Surrender can play in one turn.
Right.
And he is getting to the point that if he does draw Anduin, it is really scary. He's picked up the Silence to go with Circle of Healing. He has the Mind Blast and the Valen. That burst damage starts to get off the charts.
Orange has all of his reactive cards and a couple of Jades through Jade Spirit and Jade Blossom. This is not what he wants to be seeing right now. Where's his Aya Blackpaw?
He may choose to cycle his Wrath to try and dig further for more of his big threats. Aya, of course, being pretty crucial because it allows him to generate a threat that can potentially survive a clear if Surrender does pick up a Dragonfire Potion, which has to be in the back of Orange's mind.
Your magic shall not save.
I like silencing this. It's very clear Surrender is digging for something. I mean, if he also had the ability to start racing, we start seeing some fast Raza and Anduins because Priest wants to kill Jade Druid. They don't want to give Malfurion the Pestilent time to armor up. So Orange has a pretty decent read that Surrender is still in. He's still in assemble mode. He's trying to get everything and gather all the resources together.
Speaking of modes, what mode will Orange choose here? He decides to tank up. He decides that, okay, I have inevitability. I am the one who is looking to extend this game. I don't want the burst potential for Surrender to catch me off guard.
A No-Shard Cleric in a Circle of Healing.
Circle of Healing.
That has a lot of draw potential here.
It is. Surrender can attack into both of the Scarabs, play Cleric plus Circle. That will draw him
4 cards?
4 cards.
That overdraws him, actually.
Yeah, he's actually going to have to... he can actually, if he plays Holy Nova, he can draw even more cards, but that will overdrive even more, so that's not going to work out.
I mean, he can also evaluate mid-draw. It's not like he's going to draw 9 at the same time.
It's true.
Nova first, so he kills off the Primordial Drake.
Is someone injured?
And this way he's actually going to remove one of the Scarabs here, attack in.
I like it.
It will draw him 5, which will put him exactly at a full hand, I believe. I was actually going to draw, yeah, 5.
Ooh, the animation length is starting to make me nervous.
This is always the scariest animation to me.
Oh, wait. Dirty Rat, that's something Surrender teched in, by the way.
Oh, there is Anduin.
Yeah, one of the important draws, but there's still some work to be done. Surrender just dug through almost half of his remaining deck.
Yeah, Surrender still is without Raza. We have mentioned how important it is he finds Anduin, but Raza has still eluded him as well. 7 cards left in his deck. One of those is the final piece he needs to really get his combo going.
Man, these Doomsayers are also kind of a liability. If Surrender did manage to find Doomsayer, it always is like a Hail Mary option because you're going to play your other minions besides Doomsayer,
right,
and that kind of leaves you vulnerable to it. So that's probably an incentive to actually hold on to Mire Keeper to increase the chance that it doesn't happen.
Doomsayer protection, yeah.
You're rarely going to be behind on board, so when do you ever want to really Doomsayer to try and set up for some powerful swing? It's not like you have like a huge amount of Jades either. It's just a 4-4 right now.
Now there's 2 Doomsayers and 2 other minions in Orange's hand after he plays this Jade Spirit. So if Surrender were to want to try and clear this board with a Dirty Rat, he'd have a 50-50 shot. Oh, now Orange is going on the offense. He thinks, right, okay, you drew so many cards.
Too much.
I need to try and end this game. I can't give you any more time.
Raza the
That's
chain
Raza.
comes to the hand. He knows that he needs that Surrender needs 2 turns. And if I'm Orange and I see Surrender react to that draw, just like that, I'm starting to put 2 and 2 together.
Potion of Madness plus Akanai Circle can just clear the board? Or he also has other tools available to him. The Pyromancer.
I must consider
What he's considering now.
But then he can't play Raza the Chain. Oh!
Going for it.
Here we
Dirty
go!
Rat.
Oh, man. Potential disaster. For Orange, of course, it would have been rapture for Surrender.
Yeah, there's still the Akanai Circle that can still clear off this board.
He has 2 spells. And the way the trades go down also tends to... Oh, Holy Smite! That should be clear, I believe.
Yeah, I think that this is enough. Along with the silence, if he chooses to use it, he didn't even just... Yeah, does he even need the silence? He can actually just trade minions in, yeah, and then fire off the silence. There it is. So full clear available for Surrender here. He is still in a precarious position. He's at 9, but Orange does not have very much left in the tank here.
Well, oh, yeah, you're right. Like, your opponent played Dirty Rat, and the moment you play Doomsayer, you're giving your opponent a free Anduin turn. But at the same time, you haven't played any big J's to really warrant, so that maybe you can start pressuring that way. Like if you set up Doomsayer and then maybe you draw a Jade the next turn, then you can like go for a big Jade there.
Yeah. I realized I was talking about Akanai Circle when it was a silence that was a 0-cost card in his hand, but Surrender found it regardless. But yeah, the Jades come down, but it is Anduin in Surrender's hand that can answer the 6/6.
So Anduin will clear 2 of these minions, gain 5 health. It goes up to 14 with 3 on the board. 11 is actually doable from Druid's hand because he has Malfurion the Pestilent with 3 damage and 2 swipe potentials.
If he does find the second swap. Yeah, the Anduin plus the ping on the slime leaves 14 versus 3 on board. That means 11 more damage will be required from Orange. If he does find the second swipe, Surrender would die after playing Anduin this turn.
Here's another thing. Surrender just has a lot of his cheap spells, like Holy Smite and Circle of Healing
His
and
burst potential is
Silence.
much lower.
He actually can't really burst for like the 30 that we're talking about. I feel like even though Orange is kind of limping to the finish line here, he's getting closer despite the fact that his hand is as feeble as it gets.
He finds a big card here. Things could... Jade Behemoth's pretty big. It does potentially allow him to get enough pressure on to outrace Surrender's ability to burst, because as you mentioned, Surrender, he still needs to even play Raza. He still needs to get that part of his combo down, and he doesn't have very many cheap spells left. He had to commit them to that Wild Pyromancer clear.
As close as it gets, because if Surrender was able to get the combo online, Orange does not have the biggest Jades to really stop Surrender from being able to start racing. But Surrender might not have enough time.
Just 8 life for Surrender. That is just a swipe, punch, and any minion hit away. There's a mind control here, but that doesn't do it. He can mind control the taunt, but the minion plus the swipe and the Malfurion punch will finish the game even if he steals a taunt.
Darkness speaks.
Valen Blast, just 10.
He has to find a way to kill the 7/7 then. Oh no, I think that might be it then, no matter what he does. Unless there's some card that I'm not thinking of. He's gonna draw. Needs to find some way to get him out of the situation.
Not sure there is anything. Curious Glimmerroot. I think Surrender realizes that this is not the time he becomes a champion just yet.
We are going to Game 5 to decide it all. Orange has taken down the Priest. And somehow survives.
And that was so much pressure from Surrender in the early game.
Yeah.
But Orange had such great mana ramp, he was able to get to his big spells and stymie Surrender just before things were too late. He was able to get rid of the early aggression and get himself back on the board. Even if his own hand was weak, he was able to whittle down enough of what Surrender was doing.
And with that, we are tied 2 games apiece. When we come back, we will find out who will be your summer champion.
BlizzCon Online with the virtual ticket. Includes in-game items and more.
Gather round the fire, for there's a new tale to be told. This is the 2017 Hearthstone Summer Championship.
Surrender is still one game away, but Orange has equalized the field, and the series is tied 2 games apiece. Orange has requested to step out just for a little bathroom break, but he's back, and now we'll get ready for game number 5, where it's all on the line, no matter what happens, unless there's a tie, which rarely happens in Priest vs. Priest. So outside of that situation, we're going to have a summer champion here, Kibler. What do you think it's going to be, Priest vs. Priest? Orange said he specifically teched his Priest for the mirror, so does that give him that significant of an edge, you think, or do you still feel like it's very even?
It's definitely an important component in this matchup. Orange and Purple chose to play Gadgetzan Auctioneer in their deck, rather than Lyra the Sunshard, which is the more popular choice. Gadgetzan Auctioneer not only is a 4-attack minion, which has been the bane of priests, specifically Gadgetzan Auctioneer, as far as 4-attack minions,
Tell me more.
for the entirety of Hearthstone's existence, but also because it draws cards from your deck rather than random cards, makes you much more likely to find the combo pieces we need, and there it is.
Wow.
In Orange's opening hand.
And he gets the coin, which can be a really big deal. Coin is really good to land your power curve if you want to get coin Anduin first, or if, in this case, you have Gadgetzan Auctioneer to help cycle, perhaps.
Just draw. Each of your cheap spells, obviously, with Lyra, can potentially generate more value, but with Auctioneer, can dig you closer to what really matters, especially in this matchup, which is assembling the combination of Raza plus Anduin.
If you were to be in one player's spot right now, because people will say, well, if you don't have one of the pieces, I think you'd rather have Shadow Reaper Anduin to start at least value trading a lot of the stuff with your hero power so you can get advantage, but Orange has a lot of card draw on Raza, so who would you rather be here, Orange or Surrender?
I think looking at these hands, I'd rather be in Orange's shoes, because the power of that Auctioneer, I think, is huge. And there is some weirdness in terms of the card draw available to Surrender, because it is vulnerable to Potion of Madness, and Orange does have that card in his hand. So having played out the Loot Hoarder until he can kill it himself, Surrender is potentially in a situation where he can no longer play any more minions.
Oh, that's right. Or at least until maybe he draws something that helps him. And you mentioned that Orange's hand was looking good. It's looking even better with that Kazakus coming into it.
Yeah, Orange definitely taking his time. This is a matchup that we're all going to sit back and take our time, I think. Doesn't look like either player has a massive edge just yet. Curious Gloomaroot, potentially able to dig for power cards from your opponent's deck, but once again, the threat of losing your card draw to a Potion of Madness is pretty huge.
It's a huge difference, primarily because one card deeper gets you one card closer to getting online the Raza and the Anduin.
I must consider.
But at the same time, you're giving up a lot of tempo, so you kind of cornered yourself with this play here.
We've actually even seen players kill their own card draw minion with a Shadow Word Pain early in the week. I believe Tom had played a Loot Hoarder. He just Shadow Word Pained it so he could draw a card and then play another minion. And Surrender, that's exactly what he's thinking about. He's thinking, can I afford to commit, say, the Curious Gloomaroot or the Gnomish Inventor here and run the risk of losing my card draw? He does. And now Orange has the Potion of Madness to steal the card draw here.
Yes, that he does. And there's no rush to Kazakus immediately because he doesn't even know exactly what he wants right now. Also, you get the benefit of, kind of guaranteeing that you get the card draw. Plus, it's a minion that Kazakus can maybe summon back if that's what you end up going for. And it's early in the game. However, how many cards does he have? He's got 9. Okay, he's still safe. He just cycles Potion of Madness, essentially.
Now you see a little bit of a reaction there from Surrender. He knew the risk. And this is an interesting decision. There's a consideration for Orange to heal his opponent's Gnomish Inventor to deny a possible card draw from Rorschach.
Okay.
It is valuable, of course, to heal yourself. your own life total does matter in the matchup, but the single most important thing is card draw. And I think there is at least some consideration given to using your hero power to prevent your opponent from possibly drawing with Cleric.
It's clever. I like it. Is it too clever? Or is Orange should he just play Doomsayer just to get some good old tempo back on his side because he's got Raz on 5? Surrender's got a direct answer with his own Shadow or Pain, and he can draw a card like you were mentioning.
He can also just use Silence to remove the Doomsayer's ability. Shadowward Pain and Silence both have utility in the matchup. Silence generally late game is more valuable because it's a burst potential for 0 with the Raza Anduin combo. However, Shadowward Pain being able to remove Priest of the Feast in the mid game, as well as just general minions, Kazakus, whatnot, does also have a lot of utility.
Surrender goes to draw a card here, and he gets Alkanite Soul Priest. A little bit of an awkward card in the matchup.
Circle of Healing with his Northshire Cleric in play already is not super exciting because there's a very good chance it dies. If he were able to, damage minions now, say he had some mana left over or hadn't healed yet on his own minion, he's actually just going to cycle a circle. He's going to go ahead and just use that as 0 cost, cycle it, and then fire off the Silence.
Yeah, I can get behind that as well. I think Surrender just understands that he has Anduin already, so the big thing he's missing is just...
Right. And both players playing exactly like this. They're recognizing the single most important thing I can do is get through my deck. They definitely want to ensure that they are the first one to the combo because that is so powerful.
Here's another thing too. Orange does have a way to deal with it through Shadowward Heart, but he is delaying a couple of other things, but it is important to remove that card draw source.
Yeah, the Cleric is terrifying. The Cleric here from Surrender, particularly given that he hasn't played his own Circle of Healing. That was actually the Circle of Healing off of the Shadow Visions. He does know that, of course, it is in his hand. He'd have to actually pick it up. But Raza comes down for Orange, doesn't want to give up too much tempo on this board. Currently no real way for Surrender to take massive advantage of this Cleric living, however.
You can attack the Doomsayer, heal it to draw a card, which in my opinion is a win if I'm Surrender.
Getting a free card is very, very valuable. He can even follow that up with the Kazakus. There's always a little bit of weirdness, though, when you have a Cleric in play in a matchup where you know your opponent also has Circle of Healing, because there is the risk of getting overdrawn. If your opponent does somehow, say, Spirit Lash Circle with a bunch of minions on board, you could run the risk of just losing a key component of your combo.
I think I might like Curious Glimmer here. You still have a chance to hit Raza, which is pretty much the thing that you're looking for, and you're coming up on a turn where you'd rather be able to set up Raza and Anduin. And if you can do it, then your opponent's advantage for having the coin is not nearly as impactful as it could be.
Finds himself a Shadowward Horror off the Glimmer route. Pretty weak, but is a resource.
I mean, it's essentially a random card draw because essentially they're playing the same 25 cards. Shadowward Horror happens to not be that impactful right now, but it could be.
There's actually some consideration in some instances. Yeah, he actually... Oh! I was going to say, there's consideration in some instances that you don't want to get a card into your hand. Because if your hand is too full, here specifically with the Northshire Cleric, he does not want to run the risk of overdrawing. He feels like the value of putting the Shadowward Horror into his hand is not worth the risk of potentially having his Cleric exploited for it by his opponent to overdraw him.
Wait, so you're telling me that Surrender purposely clicked the wrong one?
Yes, he did. Do you think he doesn't know?
I just want to make sure I'm interpreting.
That's what I'm saying, and that is. I was actually going to say that sometimes there's a justification to take the wrong card, and Surrender felt like it was worth it there.
That is completely next level. We'll see if it pays off. Orange goes for the 1-mana Kazakus potion. Awkward to say the least. I guess the Shadow Oil adds a random card to your hand.
He did get AoE. It looks like. No, he took summon a random minion and freeze. Is he going for the circle? Is he going for the massive overdraw?
The big overdraw.
6 cards for Surrender.
That is way too many for him to hold. And if he burns Raza, he is going to be in deep trouble. No Raza. Lyra and Dirty Rat are expendable. Radiant Elemental is expendable. Power Shield! Harvest Engineer and
Did not
somehow
lose his Raza. He survived the burn of so many of his cards. That was Orange making an incredibly high-risk, high-reward play. He expended a lot of his own resources to attempt to give himself a chance to get rid of a key combo piece from Surrender. However, ultimately, that drew Surrender several cards. He ultimately ends up with only 10 cards.
Several cards,
well,
huh?
Ultimately, he ends up with only 10 cards in hand. So in terms of the actual resources that he gained 2 cards. However, because he didn't actually burn one of those cards, it gets him that much closer to drawing his Raza now.
Whew, you're telling me he drew half his deck. And, you know, sometimes you're like, oh man, Raza's in the bottom 7 cards of my deck. I'm so unlucky. In this case, Surrender couldn't be more happy to see that.
Yeah.
And by all means, no
Get
Cleric,
that Cleric outta
you've
here.
done enough. That'll do, Cleric. That'll do. By the way, Orange still 18 cards remaining in his deck. He's just a cool 10 cards behind.
I think, how many cards ultimately did Orange burn there? There was a 6-card
Burned
draw
5,
initially. There were 6-card draw initially with 3 spots in the hand.
Oh wait, you're right.
And then he, I believe, healed 2 more times after the circle, if I recall correctly.
So he drew 6 cards.
I believe it was 6 total
so he
burn
burned
cards.
5.
Right.
5 or 6?
I think it was 6. I could be misremembering precisely, but
Okay.
6 cards burned from a, what, 15-card deck?
I mean, Lyra and Radiant Elemental is no joke, too. If Surrender gets in the world where Raza is actually the 30th card in his hand, then he actually doesn't have many resources to play with if he has to play defense for a while.
All right, well, now Surrender, there is the Auctioneer on the other side of the board. He has his Potion of Madness. He can do exactly to Orange what Orange did to him early on. Get a card draw. Kill this Auctioneer. Dig closer to Raza. Still not there, though. How many of Surrender's cheap spells got burned? What is his actual burst potential?
Well, he's used Silence. He burned Power Word Shield. Radiant Elemental is gone. So if he has Mind Blast and another one, and he used Circle of Healing. If, oh no, that was a Circle of Healing off the Shadow Visions.
Right. This is one of those situations where it is so unlikely it has come up in the players' testing before, trying to evaluate, okay, can I just try and survive against Surrender now? He is 10 cards deeper in his deck. Is there any world in which you fatigue this deck when they have most of their combo?
It's interesting, yeah, because I mean, Surrender didn't burn his Prophet Valen either.
Right. He managed to preserve both Raza and Valen, the 2 most important cards.
Such an interesting thing to think about. Like, if Surrender had burned like all of his stuff, like his Prophet Valen, I wonder how much different this game would look. Still, no Raza. We're kind of talking about that hypothetical, and it's becoming a reality with each passing draw.
All right, well, Surrender is just pulling the trigger now, though. He doesn't need Raza to get this going. Shadow Reaper Anduin is online. Orange used so many resources trying to burn Surrender's combo, and now has a very small hand facing the Death Knight.
And, you know, Orange felt like he had to use his Gadget and Auctioneer to draw. And as a result, a lot of these cheap spells are just left high and dry. He has definitely easy ways to answer this board. The only thing is, how does Orange, long-term, bail himself out if he doesn't have Shadow Reaper Anduin? He still has 15 cards. This chance of drawing Anduin is in the single digits.
And he needs to deal with both this board as well as try and keep himself afloat. Surrender has so many cards to fire off and reset his hero power as Anduin. And he is incredibly likely to draw Raza at any moment. Valen, not precisely what he's looking for yet, but is a piece of the puzzle.
They can get there. I mean, to be quite honest, you don't need Raza in a situation like this if Orange is just going to be taking a bullying session here. Surrender can just kind of push a little bit damage every single turn, and then Prophet Phelan Mind Blast Holy Smite itself is 14 damage.
Right, and Orange has used his healing. He used his Binding Heal earlier as part of his big combo to try to overdraw Surrender. And when that didn't work out, he is now left with no real way to preserve his life total outside of his hero power and a Priest of the Feast.
Surrender, thinking about the Kazakus potion, and the one thing that I was thinking of is Surrender still has a lot of cards in hand. If he ends up summoning minions that end up helping him draw cards, could be a disaster. It ends up cycling instead.
Acolyte of Pain.
Let's not play that.
When you have 3 cards left in your deck and almost a full hand, maybe not the card to play.
Orange can draw. He's got Northshire Cleric. In fact, there is a couple ways you can chain this. If he has Holy Nova, if he has other ways to be able to benefit off of the damaged minions. Doesn't even want to take damage on Northshire Cleric because he doesn't have insurance. Ops Engineer helps. Just getting deeper into his deck. That's a Shadow Reaper Anduin.
All right.
We have a game. Oh, he doesn't have Raza. I was thinking like,
Still
oh,
no
he's got
Raza.
enough.
2 cards in the deck. Surrender, still no Raza. How many people out there who are thinking, oh, we're going to see another Highlander Priest mirror for the final game of this tournament, thought we'd see anything like this?
I thought I'd see some fireworks, but not like this.
Speaks to me.
This has been ridiculous. And it's for all the marbles. 27 series in. We've had 18 go to Game 5.
Like you said, none of those games were anything like this.
Surrender, can you find a way to actually set up a 2-turn lethal? He has to get his opponent down to 12, because then his opponent heals for 2, and then he has 14 guaranteed. He doesn't have to wait for a Raza.
Right?
Oh. This is interesting. I didn't think about Acolyte in the beginning.
He's going to guarantee, he's going to get the draw off of this. His last card is Raza the Chained.
Unbelievable. Orange gains health with Shadow Reaper Anduin, and he has Prophet Phelan Mind Blast as well. This is going to be a photo finish. Get your cameras out. One way or another, we're coming to a conclusion of this series.
There's a lot of math here. Exactly how the best way you do this is.
So with Phelan and Circle of Healing, is that the 24 combo that we're used to seeing here? That's 2, 14, 20,
It's 30.
20. Is it 30?
Surrender has 30 with the Holy Smite, I believe. I believe it's a total of 30 damage with the Circle of Healing plus Holy Smite and the Mind Blast Valen. So he could just end the game next turn.
Unless Orange can clear the board, heal, or somehow pull out a miracle.
There's no healing
cards.
left in Orange's deck. He does not have greater healing potion. There's no way to get himself. And even if he healed, what is he healing to? 30?
Well, he's healing to 30, but Surrender also takes maybe a fatigue
does
damage
take
and then
fatigue.
puts him within range. He's got Valen, Holy Smite, Mind Blast himself.
I think Surrender's trying to figure out how to make sure there's no way Orange can end the game.
It's only 24 that I see from Orange. And he knows that Surrender has Prophet Valen in every single card. This could be checkmate here.
Yeah, Valen plus Mind Blast, including all the hero powers, just alone is 20 damage. Holy Smite on top of that, 26. But Surrender is at 33. He will take 1 point of fatigue. That's not enough.
Orange counting everything.
Shaking his head. He knows Surrender has his deck in his hand. All of these cards are there.
Shadowy thought.
The risk that he took earlier has not paid off, and the shadowy thoughts of despair are coming over Orange right now. He'll do what he can. Maybe there's something he forgot. But if the math checks out and the order is right, Surrender should be able to finish and clinch the series.
You see a breath let out by Surrender there, and the math does indeed check out. Balin, Mind Blast, Holy Smite, Circle of Healing, all the damage he needs.
We have a champion. Surrender from South Korea is your Hearthstone Championship Tour summer winner.
He said that he wanted, not just he wanted, he promised his teammate Hoi that he would win the tournament so they could not face off in the group stage of the World Championship. He kept his promise. He is the champion.
And for the first time on the global stage, South Korea takes its rightful place in Hearthstone esports, ending the summer season #1.
The only player to come to this tournament planning to ban Rogue. His strategy got him all the way to the finals. Then he needed to battle through the Priest Mirror. It was a game unlike any we'd seen throughout the entire tournament, but it was Surrender who came out on top.
And also, he had a handful of highlight plays. You saw some of the reels of cool moments, great reads, incredible strategy, and Surrender is in many of those top 10 moments.
Yeah, he has been a player who people have talked about for years, hyped him up even before he had any success in the HCT stage, but now all the success is his.
Yeah, how long has he been in the shadows of his teammates who said, what's so great about Surrender? Now you know. TJ is waiting with our champion.
Thank you very much, Dan. That's right. I'm standing by with the champion, Surrender, and I gotta ask you, what's going through your head right now just having won the championship?
지금 소감 한마디 해주세요.
솔직히 말하면은 지금 제 뇌에 아무것도 안 들어있는 것 같아요.
Right now my mind is actually very blank.
I can only imagine. I can only imagine. Well, I know your mind's blank, but I have to ask, I think everybody in the crowd's wondering, what were you thinking when Orange made you draw 8 cards in that turn? And then after, when Raza was your very last card in the matchup?
좀 물어보고 싶은 게 오렌지가 8카드를 유도하고 그리고 라자가 맨 마지막 카드였는데 어떻게 생각하세요?
그때 당시에 제 패가 타고 있을 때 사실 솔직히 말해서 그때 제가 졌다고 생각했어요. 제가 실수한 게 맞기 때문에. 그래서 뭐 라자가 타도 내가 실수한 거니까 어쩔 수 없다고 생각했는데 안 타서 기분 너무 좋았죠.
Yeah, when my cards were burning, I thought that oops, I made a mistake, and if Raza burned, then it was my mistake. But I was really happy that it didn't burn.
I can get that. I can get that. All right, but I know you said your mind's blank, but tell me, try and put it in words what this victory means for you personally.
이 우승이 어떤 의미가 되나요?
같은 팀에 있는 호이 선수랑 월드 챔피언십에서 안 만날 수 있겠죠?
It means that I don't have to meet my teammate Hoi in the World Championships in the preliminaries.
Yeah, that's very true, very true. All right, well now it's my pleasure to welcome to the stage to present the trophy, CEO and co-founder of Blizzard Entertainment, Mike Morheim.
Congratulations, Surrender. What an amazing final match, and what an amazing event here. And I want to thank everybody for coming out and supporting us at our first Hearthstone event at the Blizzard Arena Los Angeles. Thank you guys, you've been a great crowd. Congratulations also to all of the competitors. You know, there have been some amazing matches, and we all know how much it takes to even be here on stage at an event like this. It's a ton of work, and so congratulations to all of you. Looking forward to our World Championships in Amsterdam, January 18th through 21st. And BlizzCon is right around the corner, so hope to see you all there too.
All right, Surrender, hoist that bad boy up, and let's give one round of applause to our champion, Surrender. Make sure you guys join us at BlizzCon for the inaugural Hearthstone Invitational. And on behalf of Blizzard Entertainment, everybody here at the Hearthstone Championship Tour, thank you for watching, and we'll see you in Amsterdam.